What's happening, everyone? I'm incredibly excited. I've finally got the main man into the studio. I've been pestering him for weeks and weeks, but he is finally here. Mr. Gareth Roberts, honoured that you're finally joining me in the studio, mate. How are you?
I'm good, mate, yeah. Long drive down, but, you know,
mate,
impressive studio, mate. I'm loving it. I'm very jealous.
Mate, I really appreciate you finding the time, mate. There's nobody, in a Liverpool context, there's literally nobody better to talk to, mate. So I really do appreciate you finding the time. Everything going well?
Yeah, good. Late challenge still going. Spirit of Shankly stuff still going. I'm still going. Me and you are still on the overlap. They haven't kicked us off. So, yeah, happy days, mate. And, you know, I was at Palace at the weekend, and obviously that was a little bit of a blow. But I've got to be honest that when I was travelling down there, I was thinking, this could be the one. Do you know what I mean? Because they're so good.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, I almost hate sometimes mainstream media and the way it deals with football. It's so reactive all the time, isn't it? And it's like, oh, well, that's it then. Liverpool can't win the league now because they lost one game away to Palace. Behave yourselves. Palace are a good side. Good manager.
This is it.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what, Robert? When I was talking about this, I think there are millions of things to explore as to why Liverpool didn't win the game, right? But sometimes the most obvious reason is probably the correct one. The most obvious reason is that Oliver Glasner is a geezer. Yeah. He's a proper manager.
He'll get a big job, won't he, next after this? I mean, I'm not saying that isn't a big job, but you know what I mean? He'll go to another level, I think.
Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, proper club. I think that he is a true genius. I think you could argue undoubtedly one of the best managers in the league, therefore one of the best managers in Europe, therefore one of the best managers in the world. He is top tier. So when you're trying to explore why Liverpool lost, there are loads to delve into with regard to Liverpool, and we can look at maybe the deficiencies here and there. But by and large, you went to play a team that are managed by one of the best managers in the world. You went to a stadium that, certainly by modern day football standards, it's a raucous ground.
Great ground.
A great ground.
Yeah,
I love it. And they make a racket, particularly behind like that Holmesdale end. They make a racket. Yeah. And equally, you're playing a team that, unbeaten in 18 games?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just lost to a good team. And the way Liverpool play, you're never really going to go unbeaten, are you? So it's not that surprising that the defeat eventually came. Yeah,
exactly. And look, you know, you can pick it apart, as you say, and, you know, we were doing that yesterday on our podcast, and, you know, you can do all the stuff about, could Arne Slot have done something different? Could he have, you know, almost held out for a draw, gone a little bit more defensive? But that's not in his nature, and that's not what we want him to do. And as you say, we're set up to be an attacking side. It's in his nature to be an attacking manager. He wanted the 3 points, not one.
Exactly.
And, you know, we gambled, and for once it bit us in the arse. But, you know, sometimes that will happen. And if you're saying to me, would you take 1-5, lost 1 in your first 6 all day? I would.
This is it. Mate, I completely agree. And that's another thing as to why the defeat happened. Because Arne Slot clearly doesn't see the value in a draw. And I think the way that the league is now, you know, you're incredibly strong, Manchester City can't be totally discounted, and Arsenal are very strong. There isn't really a value in a draw.
No.
Like, you're going to need to accrue, I think a serious points tally. Like, really serious. A point, it doesn't really help you out.
No.
Not massively. Maybe symbolically, going unbeaten or whatever. But the reason why Arsenal were invincible is because they drew 12 games. They weren't. Once Chiesa got you back in the game, you could have had a point.
Yeah.
But you went for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's fine. But let's focus it now on Liverpool. I don't necessarily agree with it. Just so you know, I don't know if you where I think you're going to win the league. I think that you're a brilliant team, and I think Arne Slot's a genius. That's kind of where I sit on it. But interestingly, the bookies' favourites for the league now are Arsenal, off the back of a fairly symbolic win, but it's one win at St James's Park. It surprised me. But they're obviously looking not only at the challenge that Arsenal are capable of, but also maybe the slight deficiency in Liverpool. Let's start with the big one, right? Florian Wirtz. You've watched him in the flesh. You've seen what he's about. You obviously were aware of the player that you thought you were signing. Where do you sit on this Florian Wirtz debate?
It's only a handful of games, isn't it? And I think, you know, there's not really been one where he's absolutely blown your hat off. And I think that's the problem. And that's what, going back to what I said earlier about sort of the way football media deals with things, it's all very black and white, isn't it? So you spend 100 or up to £116 million on a player, then of course he should immediately hit the ground running, score goals, assist goals, you know, light up every football match that he plays in. Now, every opposition manager knows what he can do. You heard David Moyes talk about how good he was and that kind of thing post the derby. He didn't start the derby, And I think it was right that he didn't start the derby, because when he came into the derby, he looked like a man who was not ready to play in a derby. Do you know, because physically they targeted him. There was a point in the game where he literally pulled out of a tackle. That didn't go down well on the cop, as you can imagine. No. But look at him. Look at the size of him. Look at the stature of him. Look at the way he plays football. It's going to take a while for him to get used to what... I think even get used to what is a foul in this country. I've seen him a few times where he'll get barged off the ball and I can see him looking at the ref and throwing his arms around, and I'm thinking, lad, that is not a foul here. Yeah. And you might have got that in Germany, but you're not getting it here. So it's these little things that I think he needs to pick up. But equally, you know, you can see the touch on him. You can see the vision of him. You know, I don't know how he didn't score against Palace. I mean,
I know.
It's such a great ball from Dom Szoboszlai.
Such a great ball.
And it's like, you know, I'm terrible at football, but I back myself to put it in the back of the net.
The thing is as well, it was a lack of conviction. Yeah. It was delicate. It was. You think, mate, there is a way of scoring that, and in fact, there's a way of missing it, but it wasn't that. That was kind of a pitiful, lacking in conviction, lacking in belief, lacking in confidence. And
there's a bit of that going on generally, like I say. I mean, you know, I thought away at Burnley, there was definitely flashes there. That was probably, you know, I thought he influenced the game that day, and, you know, on another day, you know, he's done something that's lit that up. But there are little flashes in that game where you're like, yeah, I thought there were flashes at Wembley against Palace where he looked good then. But as I say, people don't think it's enough because they want the immediate impact. And look, it's probably going to be a bit of a slow burner. We've had slow burners at Anfield before, and it's fine. We've got a squad. We've got other players that can come in and do what they're doing. And I think, for me, like, one of the stars of this season so far, albeit that it's still early stages, is Dom Szoboszlai, because
I can't believe it.
I think he's looked at what's gone on and gone, right then, watch this. And he's stepped it up.
It's amazing.
And
it's amazing.
He's playing really, really well.
Obviously, and he's done incredibly well to prove me wrong. Maybe I was wrong at the crux of this argument. But when Liverpool signed Wirtz, and I was thinking of where Wirtz fits into the team,
everyone said he'd drop off.
I just thought Dom Szoboszlai wouldn't be in the team.
Yeah.
Because I thought Szoboszlai was sort of your attacking midfielder last year. I think he got 7 goals. Then you looked at what Florian Wirtz was doing in Germany, and you're like, it's treble. There's no real comparison here, and Dom Szoboszlai, very good player, but probably not good enough for this iteration of Liverpool. I don't know if he kind of believed that and was like, okay, watch this. But he's made himself totally indispensable.
Yeah,
it's an amazing professional attitude, isn't it?
He's been brilliant, and you know he's been playing at right back, where he said the only time he'd ever played there before was in a friendly. And you're like, well, wow, if that is the case, because, you know, when he's gone there, he's been absolutely brilliant there. And there's you know, there are little moments, aren't there, when you go to a game that aren't necessarily picked up on highlights or written up in reports or whatever. And, you know, one thing from the Palace game that sort of stuck out to me was, you know, the first goal is not great. It's not actually a corner, and Liverpool apparently got all the decisions. Anyway, but you look at that, and there's like a series of things that happen that lead to it. And one of them is, you know, Conor Bradley is waiting for a ball from Virgil van Dijk to arrive on his chest, and a Crystal Palace player's spotted it and has run and intercepted it, and off they go. So Bradley's chased all the way back. Konate, who had a terrible game for Liverpool against Crystal Palace, has sort of meandered over. So Szoboszlai's got there before all of them. Yeah. He's sprinted from somewhere, God knows where. And that's how he's been playing. Yeah. That's how he's been playing.
Man-possessed.
He really, you can tell he's like, I can see that my place is potentially under threat, so watch this, I'll show you. And he's been absolutely brilliant.
That's the kind of mentality, though, that wins you a league.
Yeah.
Like, if that's mirrored throughout the squad, everybody then has to elevate their performances, because what should happen in theory is whoever is competing with Szoboszlai for a place in the team, whether it's Bradley, whether it's Wirtz, whoever it ends up being, they then need to look at Szoboszlai's form and go, right, okay, watch this. And that's how you just level up. In terms of the centre-half that you touched on there, the Konate issue, Mark Gay, he was obviously something that you missed out on. What do you think is the best centre-half partnership? Because I always thought Gomez and Van Dijk was a nice fit.
It was, and there's time. I mean, that gets a little bit forgotten in time. That there was a time there where people were going on about, you know, he's one of the best centre halves in England in terms of Joe Gomez. They were talking about that partnership, the bromance almost between Gomez and Van Dijk. It's just really unfortunate with Joe that he's had so many injuries, and you know you can never know because the club aren't going to tell you, but you sense that almost that I don't think they trust him to play game after game after game. Because even on Saturday, you know, the manager's shown over time that he'll hook you if he thinks you're playing terribly.
Yeah.
He'll hook you if he thinks you're going to get sent off, like he did with Kirkes at Burnley. So, there's a case that Konate should have been hooked because his head was gone. He was making mistake after mistake against Palace in the first half, and you were like, bring on a centre half. But and the only reason I can think why he wouldn't do is because he's thinking, well, he played the other night, and I'm not sure he can do 2 games in a week. And like I say, that's just really unfortunate, and I think that's what it is. And look, Konate, has always had it in him for me to have the odd dodgy game, and he's also had it in him, I think, where if something happens, it gets to him.
Yeah.
You can see it's got to him. And I think the very best players just shrug it off and carry on, don't they? But I think it does get to him. And there are little things, I mentioned this on my own podcast yesterday. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, maybe I'm not. But it worries me that I've seen him online reacting to what people write or say about him, Konate. I'm talking about.
What will he reply to trolls effectively?
Well, no, he's replied to praise. Is what I see. Is a thing I saw fairly recently. So a journalist, David Lynch, had done a series of tweets sort of talking about. This wasn't after the Palace game, obviously, but talking about how well he'd been playing, what a good player he is generally. Is he a bit underrated? There's a reason that potentially Real Madrid are interested. All of that kind of stuff. And he replied to that, and I kind of just thought, well, what are you doing online even, and why are you interested in what people are saying? I kind of think they should stay out of that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've heard Virgil van Dijk and I've heard Mo Salah say that to Rio Ingamoa. They're saying to him, don't go on social media, don't get involved with social media. The last thing you need at your age is social media. And it looks like it's going on anyway, because you would do if you scored the winner at Newcastle in a Premier League game. But I think it's the right advice, because I know from just doing this kind of thing, the type of stuff you get. Poison. Exactly. So imagine that times 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000, whatever footballers get. So it worries me that he's there, looking at this stuff, and that makes me think: is there maybe, feel a bit harsh saying these things, but is there a mental thing there?
Yeah.
With Konate, because at his best he can be brilliant, and I actually think. He's improved. You can make a case for him improving. So there was a time where you didn't fancy seeing him on the ball at any point. And evidence of Crystal Palace, he tries to do that turn on the centre circle and Mateta's away. But I thought he'd improved at that. I thought he'd improved with his passing. And it always felt to me that teams are happy for him to have the ball out of him and Van Dijk for obvious reasons. But he improved, and he actually set some goals up, and he's pinging passes, and you're like, okay, you've got a lot better at that. This season so far looks like he's regressed a little bit, and of course everyone then makes the link of, is this because he's thinking of leaving? Is this because Real Madrid are allegedly lurking in the shadows again, and that kind of thing? And
it also alerts you to why Liverpool seem to be so keen on getting Mark Gahey. From the outside looking in, I thought that you needed Gahey in the way that everybody kind of needs Gahey. Gahey's England's best centre half. Of course, you kind of all need him, right? But I was looking at your squad and I thought, well, Konate and Van Dijk are strong. I rate Joe Gomez. I can see that there's need for maybe some cover, but equally we've heard Slot talk about redefining certain players. I think he mentioned Endo could cover at centre half. I know you don't want that. I know you don't. I think he said Gravenberch as well, actually.
Gravenberch's done it as well, yeah. But I mean, Gravenberch's so good further forward. Why would you want him further back? I absolutely agree. You don't want it. And in terms of an ideal, I get why you'd want Gahey. But I didn't think that it was a necessity. And suddenly I kind of seeing it, actually. And added as well that, we finally got to see Leone against Southampton, and he was brilliant. Had a great game, and then he's out for a year. And, it's terrible for the lads. But again, I thought if he, in a different reality where that hasn't happened against Southampton, and because he'd played so well, he was on the bench at Palace. You can see him come on. You can see him coming on for Konate because he was having a stinker.
So with all that in mind, the title race, we can see that there's an Achilles heel. There's an Achilles heel to Liverpool's team. There is also an Achilles heel to Arsenal's team. We've seen it. Maybe the Achilles heel at Arsenal is actually in the dugout. When you see the news that the bookies' favourites for the league now are Arsenal, I'm a bit bad. Just to ask you, actually, do you see Arsenal as your rival? Do you think that there are three? Do you think it's a 3-horse race for the league title? 2-horse
going
race?
into the season, I definitely thought it's between us and Arsenal again, because City was so bad. last season. I know they pulled it round towards the second half of the season, that kind of thing, but I still thought it feels like a lot of work for them to do to get that sort of, like, you know, I saw some of the game against Burnley and it looked like Burnley fancied themselves against them. Yeah. And I thought, you know, not so long back you wouldn't have had that. Teams just were like, we've got no chance. Yeah. And so, you know, a little bit of the mistakes but maybe being chipped away, and obviously they went on to batter them anyway. But yeah, Arsenal, you know, after the second place finishes and all the rest of it, going out and spending some money, potentially addressing the problem of goals, you thought, well, yeah, they're going to be right up there. I said that on the overlap, didn't I, when you were there, that, you know, I was so surprised the way they came to Anfield and how they set up and that they didn't come and have a go at us.
Yeah.
And, you know, how you saw against Newcastle, you know, Eze's there now and all that kind of stuff, as he should be. And you're like, well, that's probably what you should have done against us, mate. Yeah. And as you say, I'm still not sure about Arteta. He's the bit about it that gives me a bit of confidence, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people online don't like me saying that for whatever reason. I get it, he's your manager, but I'm just not convinced that he's a league title winning manager.
No, well, he's not that.
Well, he's not.
Until he convinces you that he is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and Arne Slot is. Arne Slot's come in first season.
In the most difficult circumstances, without spending any money, taking over from Klopp. It felt like the impossible task.
Yeah, and our first 6 games in the Premier League this season in terms of number of points are the same as last season when we won it. Yeah. So, again, there is no crisis as far as I'm concerned. But I sort of get it. You know, again, I'll keep harping back to the point of the way football is almost put in front of our noses in this country. It's one defeat for Liverpool. It's a last minute winner for Arsenal. And so therefore, yeah, that all Liverpool's fragilities are being exposed. Yeah. Arsenal have sorted everything, and they'll go on and win the title.
I think the reason why it can be positioned this way, it's not how I see it at all, but the reason why it can be positioned this way is because they won off the back of you losing. Like, it's the symbolic. Yeah. It's not about the 3 points as such. It would be so disastrous for Arsenal to witness Liverpool lose to Crystal Palace that if they then can't capitalise on that rare defeat for Liverpool, then they're just not about this life. They're not about this title race. What they proved to us, maybe at least, is that they are about it. They are going to find a way to win games.
They deserve to win the game.
They deserve. Oh, they were far better. Yeah. But I just wonder if it's being overstated. Like, when I think about winning at St James's Park, I appreciate that it's not easy. I appreciate that it's one of the trickier away grounds to go to. I appreciate that Eddie Howe's a very good manager, and I appreciate that Arsenal have a terrible record. I think they've lost 3 in a row at St James's Park. But realistically, it's a game that Arsenal should be winning anyway. Like, when you went there, I was a bit more sympathetic. I think it was their first home game. It was all off. It was all under the cloud of Alexander Isak. Yeah. On some level, it's probably your most hostile away game, just in terms of like the circumstances around it. But yeah, it's a big win for Arsenal. But I feel like the fact that it's actually had ramifications on the title race and the way people are seeing the title race. Like, if you thought Liverpool were going to win the league before that weekend, I don't see how you can change your mind. If you thought Arsenal were going to win the league before that weekend, then obviously it's added to your...
It's how you want to look at it, isn't it? It's, you know, I sort of get that, you know, there's a narrative that Liverpool's fragilities, Liverpool's problems were going to be exposed eventually, and, you know, we're all doing they can't possibly, you know, keep winning in the last minute, it can't go on like this, it can, all of that, the Mick McCarthy stuff. Yeah. And then, you know, eventually we didn't do it in the last minute, albeit we did score late again.
You did, yeah.
But then, you know, we finally got sucker punched in the 10th minute of injury time or whatever it was. But, you know, I'm looking at Arsenal and thinking, look, they are fantastic on set pieces and they've relied on a set piece again ultimately to win it. Is that sustainable? Because all the stuff you're saying that is not sustainable around Liverpool, well, I'm still looking at them and saying, have they solved it? You know, like, they spent a lot of money on a forward, but is he genuinely the answer? Will he show up in big games? You know, and that's the big stuff, isn't it? Once the big games come in, the Champions League games come in, you know, once we get into the real thick of the season.
What about that question back at you? Obviously, they've bought their centre forward, you've bought yours. Yet to find his feet, yet to find full fitness, obviously.
Yeah.
But is Alexander Isak, do you think he's going to be the player that you hoped he was going to be?
I think you can see that he's quite far off fitness-wise still at the moment. And, you know, when I was watching him at Palace, I thought there was a lot of... I could see him running around, pointing. I could see him, you know, waving his arms around.
We should have had a penalty, by the way. Nobody seems to... I feel like I'm the only person in the world that is even appealing for this. There was... He kind of got put... He got put in beautifully, and the ball sort of got stuck like behind his feet a bit. But there was a coming together, and then the shot kind of goes off wide.
Is that where he's done the lovely little shink?
Yeah. He ends up on the floor. literally nobody. But I was like, that's a foul. It's a foul in the box.
I mean, I've not seen that back.
Have
that
you seen it on the
particular
telly?
bit,
No, right.
So I've seen it.
I
seen
thought
it
it
at
was
the
a
time.
foul, but I'm probably wrong because nobody else is talking about it.
I thought he did really well to negotiate to get to that point where he was.
It's a lovely move.
And it's just a finish, wasn't it? And that's it. You know, it felt like if at the moment it feels like it's not just a fitness issue. It feels like also it's a understanding between players issue. And you know, whatever club you support, you've seen it at Chelsea. I've seen it at Liverpool over and over again. You need understanding between players. You know. Partnerships, even threesomes, for want of a better phrase. But you know, like Salah, Mane, Firmino was unbelievable and was a match for anyone. And you know, go back into Liverpool history, Keegan, Toshack, whatever. You know, and it's the same at centre half. It's the same across the pitch, isn't it? It's developing that understanding. That's not there at the moment. The balance isn't there, but it will be there. It will be. You know, it'll come. Like at the moment, you know, there's lots of eyes on Salah as well, and it's like, well, what's Salah doing? Salah's not playing well. Is that it? Is he done? Will Liverpool daft to give him this extra contract and the bigger money and all of that kind of stuff? And it's like, but he's quite simply not getting on the ball as much. He's not the out ball anymore because so much has changed in one summer. So, you know, when I watch Liverpool over and over again, it was give it to Van Dijk. Van Dijk looks up, pings it out to Salah. Salah uses that strength that we know he's got. He can hold the ball, and then we build from there, and we move up the pitch. That's hardly been happening. And it almost feels like Salah's like trying to involve himself, almost, you know, doing the try too hard thing. Like I've no idea why he's anywhere near a free kick. He's never scored one. You know, he's never scored a free kick in the Premier League. Never scored one in Serie A. Probably didn't score one for Basel, I wouldn't have thought.
No.
So, you know, what's he doing near a free kick? And it seems to me it's almost like a desperation to say, watch this.
Get involved.
But you're not a free kick specialist, Mo. Stay away from that, mate.
Yeah. I agree. But overall, anything you saw in that game at St James's Park for Arsenal change how you feel about the title race? Do you still feel that you'll ultimately be victorious come May?
I'm still confident, I'm still confident because, as I say, I think we've got a good basis to keep on going. We've got a little mini tough run, or I'd be interested to see what you think of that. But, you know, to me, going to Galatasaray tonight, you know, going to Chelsea at the weekend is not ideal on the back of what, you know, a little bit of a wobble. You may say otherwise because a lot of Chelsea fans seem to be incredibly negative. Do you know what?
I desperately hope I'm wrong here, but I feel like Galatasaray is always tough, obviously, but I feel like playing us is almost a perfect tonic because we're a big enough scalp and there's a strong enough rivalry for the world to look at it and go, big win for Liverpool.
Yeah.
When the reality is, it's not a particularly big win. You know, if you beat Man United, I'd say it. I'd go, God, they beat Man United, big win. Whereas we actually know beating Man United today isn't a big particular. It's not a statement.
Yeah.
But you can position it as one. You know, you are perfectly capable.
And that's who we've got after the international break as well.
And then you got them.
We've got United at home,
Yeah. So sadly, I just think that so many times games are won and lost in the dugout. And Arne Slot and Enzo Maresca, they're not in the same sport. They're just not in the same sport. So I got a feeling that you're going to be all right. And I've seen nothing to. I'm not surprised that you got beat. I'm surprised that it happened then, but I didn't think you'd go unbeaten.
No,
I didn't think you'd go unbeaten. It's not what you're trying to do. So ultimately, you were always going to lose a game. You've played 5. You played 5, won 5. You then lost. If you kick on now, which I believe you will, beat us and whatever else, I think you're then back on track and everything's fine. Big few weeks coming up though.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, like I say, all these partnerships, these understandings, they will develop. And, you know, it feels to me at the moment, we've had a summer of real change. We've had a summer of tragedy, obviously, as well with Diogo Jota. All of that needs to be factored in and sort of, you know, considered and the context of it and just, you know, just sort of stay calm. That's what I'm saying to my mates. I'm like, you know, look, we'll be all right. We're okay. We've got a good side, a good squad, a good manager. It's going to be fine. And let the outside noise be the outside noise. And, you know, Arsenal, you know, the pressure is still on them for me. You know, you've spent all this money. You still haven't won a league title. We're the current champions. Yeah. And, you know, all of those reasons that I've just said, if Liverpool were to fall short this season for whatever reason, you know, there's no pressure on Arne Slot. He's just delivered the title.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And I've also seen enough in Arsenal this year in those big games to suggest that they can still press that self-destruct button. So We shall see how it all goes. Robbo, always a joy to chat football with you, mate. Thank you so much for finding the time.
Mate.
Thank you to everybody for watching this video. Really do appreciate it. The link to Robbo's podcast is in the description below, so make sure that you check that out. And let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed the video, click subscribe, and we'll see you all in a bit. Ta-da.